I'm really now concerned about, okay, I have a hot order. I need to meet this SLA because that's a commitment that I've already made. And I do not have some of my associates show up today.
Okay.
And there are some specific skills. So I'm talking about electronic products, and there's some specific skills. So soldering and welding.
Yeah.
That is not something that's everyone's forte. And if you do not have certified welders and solders in house, then you are in big trouble.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our number one priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. Scheduling has always been challenging for manufacturing industries, especially for industries such as automotive, where stopping the assembly line even for a couple of hours could mean the loss of millions of dollars for a company. Some industries also have challenges where the skill metrics could play a huge role in your scheduling, as the skills may not be transferable. If you don't have a sense of how many associates from each skill set would show up on the shop floor, and if there might be any hot orders dropping in unexpectedly, there will always be disruptions on the shop floor. But what can companies do to manage these disruptions? In today's episode, our guest, Sneha Kumari, shares her insight into how SLAs and resource mix impact shop floor scheduling. She also shares concepts such as the importance of real-time data on the shop floor and how that can help improve the shop floor function. Finally, she discusses concepts such as the trade-offs between pseudo resources and the reduced admin efforts because of it, and how change management could play a huge role in whether your team will adopt your initiatives or not. Let me introduce Sneha to you. Sneha started as an electronics engineer and then an MBA in the supply chain from the University of Pittsburgh. She's a supply chain operations leader with over 10 years of experience in the manufacturing and energy industries. She started in quality and then moved to strategic supply chain, leading procurement, annual commodity strategy, and then to tactical side, leading demand planning, buying, inventory planning, and master production scheduling for value streams with revenue from $40 million to $100 million annually. She is a Six Sigma Green Belt certified and has been recognized by McKinsey among one of the few women operations leaders in the US in 2020. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hey Sneha, welcome to the show.
Hey, Sam, thank you so much for having me today. Super excited to talk to you.
And I am super excited as well in digging into those stories, the ones that we always discuss and we were discussing in the pre-show as well. It's going to be so much fun, Sneha. Just to kick things off, do you want to start with your personal story and your current focus?
Yes, absolutely. So, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Absolutely thankful for Sam for having me today. Quick introduction. I started my journey as an engineer, electronics engineer, and then moved on to doing my MBA in supply chain. So, I recognize myself as a supply chain operations leader with over 10 years of experience working in manufacturing and energy industries. I started my journey in quality and then eventually moved to strategic supply chain. So, Sam, I started with a lot with procurement. We talk a lot about procurement, and then moved on to tactical side, where I'm actually talking about master production scheduling, demand planning, buying, inventory planning, and bringing that full piece of production and operations together. And that's where my my expertise started with operations, and then I've just been building over that, where I've managed sustaining operations, launching new products, managing change while navigating all these processes, from shop floor associates to actually product owners and sponsors. I'm Six Sigma certified, Green Belt certified professional. I'm actually been selected by McKinsey as among one of the few women operations leader in the United States.
Okay, amazing. Congratulations. Obviously, you have a lot of accomplishments there, Sneha, in very short time. That's very cool. Obviously, we are going to discuss all of those. Before we do that, we have one of the standard questions that we ask every single guest that come
Mhm.
on the show. And that is going to be, Sneha, your perspective on business growth.
Absolutely. And I've heard many of the episodes, Sam, and it's just interesting to see different perspectives of what the definition of growth is really for different individuals. And for me, I consider growth to be synonymous to the word change. And so I've seen companies failing during this process, being super successful during this process, but it always boils down to how did we manage it at every layer of the business, the change that we were trying to accomplish. So organizations, I believe, so and I'm mostly referring to manufacturing sector, companies have to laser focus on what their next 3 to 5 year goal, whatever that revenue is that we want to accomplish. If we want to double it, one third, whatever that number is, need to understand that, be laser focused, and be ready to sacrifice on any short term goals while running this journey. Meaning, invest in more inventory if you have to, improve your service levels, invest in people. It's not and upskilling your workforce, just adding equipment to your production lines and just investing in capex isn't the end of the process, especially if you want to meet those SLAs that you have established with your customers, and if you want those customers to return to you. And while doing all of this, you want to make sure that your associates, your people, your employees are walking this path with you. So when you're planning to double or triple or whatever that number is your revenue, you also want your upstream operations to be ready for it. So your supply chain, your materials, do you have them enough? How will you unlock your capital that's sitting in inventory? How are you gonna manage your scheduling? Are your people ready to deliver that? Is your capacity up? So you need to focus on all of that sector, while also, of course, you have your front end team looking after your orders, but you need to make sure that you as a company are ready for that growth, so you don't miss your service levels, and then eventually do not miss those expectations from customers. So growth for me is super synonymous to change, and um, one big one big process that has to be tread by not just the CEOs or CFOs, but the entire company in every layer that sits in that organization.
Okay, amazing. So some very important insights there. So I completely agree with you that every company needs to be laser focused. And if you're not laser focused, obviously you are going to have a lot of waste. And there is always going to be a balance between your short-term goals as well as the long-term goals.
Mhm.
So if you have the long-term goals, then sometimes company get too short-term focused and they lose the sight of the long-term growth. So thank you so much for that. But the clarifying question that I'm going to have for you is going to be related to the SLAs that you mentioned, related
Mhm.
to the customers. So obviously you are more on the operational side of your industry or the business that you are working with. So let's say if you are working with these customers, they are giving you the SLAs, and obviously you need to have that operational infrastructure to be able to meet those SLAs. And as we were discussing in the pre-show, that you have had challenges, from the production floor in meeting those SLAs. So what I want you to tell us is, number one, what those SLAs are. Provide a little bit about the background of the customers that you have worked with, and finally talk about the challenges related to the production floor, challenges related to the production line that you have faced.
Yes, no, absolutely. And so you touch upon the SLA piece. So
Yeah.
SLAs could be defined by either your business, depending on what your competitors are looking at, because it depends on what your unique selling point is. It could be SLAs, it could be quality, whatever that is. But
Give me
of
some
course, you
example
want.
in this case. Give me examples of the
So,
SLA.
so in one case, let me just talk about the market of automotives. And
Yeah.
so if you are trying, one of the unique selling point for one of my previous companies was actually SLA, so delivery time. So being able to turn around the product in 2 weeks,
Yeah.
which is very, very competitive in terms of what our competitors are seeing, but also the quality of the product. You have to be super careful. We are talking about automotive market. You have hundreds of PPAPs and hundreds of quality process, and you're talking about actually your product goes to a customer is integrated with a final product that affects people's lives.
Yeah.
So quality and then that SLA of 2 weeks matters big time, because your end customer, your OEMs, cannot, like, you cannot miss every single percentage or decimal of percentage miss in these two KPIs is going to cost OEMs a lot, and then eventually your business. So now when I'm talking about 2 weeks, how it's it's crazy. It's crazy to be able to build that product within just a timeline of 2 weeks if you do not have the right inventory on hand, if you do not have your people understanding what your manufacturing lead time is, what your materials lead time is. There are two different lead times. And then at the same time, making sure that while you are managing your weeks of SLAs, or your turnaround to your customers, you also want to make sure that you're scheduling, like your associates on the floor, how are they managing it? There's so many changes that happens every day. You're always in the firefighting mode if you are not making the best use of the ERP systems, if you have one. If you're not invested in understanding what needs to be changed on the production floor to be able to meet that SLA, and what are the challenges, improving upon that, implementing or utilizing any kind of lean tools to be able to do that will be very important. But I do want to give you an example of one of the scheduling issues that I have faced in my experience, and what have I done to overcome it. So definitely
Yeah.
want to go over that.
Yeah.
And when leading the production floor, having supervisors and hundreds of associates reporting to you, one of the biggest challenge is actually navigating through the skills they have,
Yeah.
because of course you are talking about supervisors and operators who have been with the companies for years and years before you and will stay there after you. So how do you navigate that change with them, and also make sure that you're being sensitive during this process, and also making sure that you're utilizing the tools that you know about, that's your strength is. So one of the issues that I had was, we started the shift and the supervisors were literally scrambling to understand who's in today, because of course, you know better, absence of ERP and best MRP systems can always lead to issues, because you're always in that manual process and firefighting every day,
Yeah.
and depending on your tribal knowledge. Because if you do not have those tools on your fingertips, you're already struggling there, because you do not know what data you have to be able to make decisions. So the challenge was, we start our shift every day, and we are assigning our associates to the production lines based on what I know. Oh yeah, I think you're good in welding. You have been doing this for 3 years now. You're working this product. Go move to that production line. Go work on that workstation. If, and God forbid, if there is a hot order that drops in that needs to be completed, that just throws your entire production floor in a chaos, because now that was a decision that was made by maybe your sales team, maybe a commitment from your supply chain team that yes, we have the materials, let's go for it, and you were not part of the decision. And while you're already managing the chaos of the day, you now have a hot order to fulfill. And this business specifically that I'm talking about, we're talking about electronic products
Yeah.
that have to go into industry, and I'm in not industrial, the automotive market. And I'm really now concerned about, okay, I have a hot order. I need to meet this SLA because that's a commitment that I've already made. And I do not have some of my associates show up today.
Okay.
And there are some specific skills. So I'm talking about electronic products, and there's some specific skills, so soldering and welding.
Yeah.
That is not something that's everyone's forte. And you do not have certified, if you do not have certified welders and solders in house, then you are in big trouble, right? You've already not established that process. So, and this cross training and understanding the skills is the biggest problem for any company that is focusing on products that require specific skills. So if you are, say, in a business where there aren't very specific skills that you want to look at, you can easily interchange people
Yeah.
and send them across other production lines. But if you are working on specific skills like I mentioned, you cannot, because you only have a certain group of people who can accomplish that piece and be able to complete your product end to end. So that was the struggle day to day. Was definitely missing. The on time delivery was down, were always hovering around 40-60%.
Yeah.
Terrible. And the cross training rate was like not even measured, and you have no idea what the target is. Forget about, if you're not measuring, you don't even know what you should be aiming for.
Yeah.
So that cross train operators and why it's important is that they reduce your load on the task allocation framework that if you have,
Okay.
because operators are then substituted effortlessly, because I'm giving you some data in your hand, in my supervisor's hand. So when they start their shift, they are not struggling or scrambling around to find out, because you now already lost time in your shift. So you start your shift at 6 a.m. You already lost time 15 minutes because you are not able to understand who goes where.
Yeah.
And maybe associates who have been living working on those workstations for hundreds of years, they just go to their own workstations and do it. So you don't even know if you're optimizing your efficiency and making the most of what your capacity is. So in this case, almost all of my processes starts with current state mapping. So making understanding where your bursts are, what's your waste is,
Yeah.
and also understanding where where are those tools that needs to be identified. And scheduling was the biggest piece that I wanted to look at. Did my Gemba walks, got the feedback from the operators, and the biggest disruption of their current work was drop-in of hot orders, and also not being able to understand who should go where. So we started building a skill matrix, utilize some of our IT opportunity, of course, to build a platform, a dashboard that actually gives them them meaning the supervisors, a quick snapshot of what's going on your production floor. Who is in today? Integrate that with your HRMS system if you have one. If you don't have, find a way. So people come in and log in and tell you, yes, I'm in today, I'm not in today. And then you actually have a ticker that goes on in understanding what production line has requires what of those specific skills. And so when you keep track of that, you're not building your cross matrix, you're actually giving that as a key input to manage your schedule, to manage your resource allocation every day. And that's something that I feel is missing in some of the scheduling softwares that we have on floor. Because yes, we look at our capacity, we do our optimization algorithm, and we assign people. So you schedule tasks. What we do not look at is actually the skill matrix. And maybe it's not valuable for every industry, but for the industry that it is, it's super valuable, because you will immediately immensely see a change in your efficiency, a change in the earned hours that you gain every day, because now you were actually putting the right people in the right workstation to be able to meet that 2 weeks that you committed to your customer. So that was key, like having that data right in your fingertips, and being able to understand who, like automatically using data to assign operators to your workstations, of course, based on your capacity and your demand. You need to balance that always. So yeah, I mean, that has been a big challenge. I know I spoke for a long time, so sorry, I'm just super passionate about this. But that has been a super challenge. We're continuously building on it, but just having that agnostics on your fingertips is super, super valuable, and absolutely recommend in companies to go keep an eye for that. Look for tools that can help you tap into your operations and improve your bottom line.
Okay, so I am probably going to have a lot of questions there in the story because obviously, number one, you are super passionate about this story, and now you are making me passionate about this story because the story is really interesting. It's there. Okay, so
Okay.
now let's dig deeper into that. So obviously there was a problem related to the skill metrics, and that's going to be a problem in a lot of different
Mhm,
cases. But before
mhm,
we get there, I think the overall scheduling component, if you look at that, the way I have personally seen in different manufacturing houses is they are probably going to get the overnight plan and they are going to send the scheduling plan to the floor, and the scheduling piece is not necessarily going to be the real time. So let's say if you have any changes in the resources, I don't know how you manage that process. So for example, your assumption, if somebody does not, let's say, apply for the leaves, obviously that plan is not going to be in your ERP system or the HRMS
mhm.
system, whichever you are using. So you are actually basing your scheduling based on a certain assumptions based on yesterday. Okay.
Yes,
Now,
yes.
today is always going to be different. We all know that.
Mhm.
That's real life.
Always,
So
always.
how did you guys incorporate the real time signals in the plan? Because the plan must be built yesterday, but then you need to operate today. And today, that yesterday maybe your assumption was that I probably have the 5 welders or 10 sorters, or you were expecting them, but two of them got sick or whatever happened. Life
Yep.
happens. Right now
Yes,
they are not
yes.
there. So how do you sort of accommodate those changes in the plan? Can you touch on that first?
Absolutely. And so you're right. And in terms of what my demand should be looking like, that's
Yeah.
already decided by the planners. I know I have to make 40 units today. I have to make it. I have my
Yeah.
hour by hour plan. But now I know I start my shift and I know that two of my sorters didn't show up.
Yeah.
And I really cannot survive that 40 piece if I do not have those. But then you have that skill matrix. In your skill matrix, you have people who are experts, you have people who are intermediates, and you have people who are just beginners. If you are building those three categories with your employees, you know what your fallback back plan is. So yes, two people didn't show up, you go back. I mean, I'm talking about the software, goes back, looks into the database, who's the next best person to actually allocate, and be able to allocate those to the immediate hot order. So, you might have 40 units to be developed, produced today, right? But what if a hot order also drops in? And then how are you managing that change with your employees? Obviously, what you do not want is to disrupt all your 100 workstations if you have. I mean, just example.
Yeah.
Say if you have 100 workstations, you don't want to go and disrupt all your 100 workstations because you're now moving people around. What you do want to do with this particular software is to make sure that you only look at those workstations that actually have the capacity, have the people availability, and of course, falling back on your skill metrics on who's the next intermediate skilled person who can actually be allocated, who is available today. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does. So let's build on that. Okay. So
Mhm.
obviously, the skill metrics is a big piece. So some ERP systems actually support these skill metrics. Some ERP systems don't support these skill metrics,
Yes,
depending
yes.
upon. But typically, ERP systems are not probably going to have the resource, meaning you are not going to have the person identified in the ERP system. Typically, ERP systems capture the pseudo resource. So, for example, what ERP systems are going to do is ERP systems typically they don't know who Sneha is. I mean, you don't want to know at that level, to be honest. If you actually get
Mhm.
there, then you're the admin piece to be able to capture these plans is going to be far more difficult, far more time consuming. A lot of businesses don't want to get there. Okay, so the
Mhm.
way they
Mhm.
like to set up is, hey, I have got 5 sorters, or I have got 3 welders, or whatever. That's the pseudo resource. So they don't necessarily understand that Sneha is the resource that we are looking at, that is going to be sorted, right? In some
Yes.
industries, that could be key as well, because, you cannot, you have just one resource that is going to have that specific skill that you need at a specific workstation, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes you need the fingerprint as well of the person that, this is the person who was really trained. What is his or her name? What is the social security number? Again, the automotive is not going to be that industry. There are some industries in which you actually
No.
require the fingerprinting of the person. So in this particular case, let's say if you have the pseudo resources, do you still need to integrate with your HRMS system to be able to get these skills, or are you getting these skills just because the ERP system that you use did not really have that information related to skill metrics, and you needed to get that.
You bring up a great point. I mean, when I know ERP systems do not care about people, like they don't care about names, Sam and Sneha and
Yeah,
XYZ. They care about the skills. And what I'm saying is, if you are serving multiple different markets, so you have an industrial market, you are serving automotive, okay, and you're also serving oil and gas, for example, right? So all the workstations on the
yeah,
production floor require different skills, right?
yeah,
You map your workstations for those skills, and what you just spoke about, pseudo skills, right?
yeah.
You just know that, okay, this workstation needs these skills, and you map that with your resources, so your associates who like, how many people are actually trained in soldering, how many of that welding resource you have, what. And Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Microsoft Dynamics gets into that level, like off skills, and is actually able to give you that. But then of course not every company can afford Microsoft Dynamics, right? So you still have to look for tools that can actually be able to do that, tap into that. So you map your associates with their availability, because I need that HRMS information, understanding who showed up today, because
Yeah.
I do not know who didn't show up today. So I map those resources with whatever skills they have, and then we assign that to the workstations, because I know that this workstation has a hot order, or maybe is short of resources who was supposed to work in today but did not.
So that's a very interesting point about the Microsoft Dynamics. So in my experience, it's not the ERP systems are not going to support the individual or fingerprinting level planning. Okay, there are a
Mhm.
lot of ERP systems that actually can support. Okay, if I want to know about Sam, okay, who's Sam? Let's create a profile for Sam, and Sam goes to this workstation at this minute, at this hour. That's how detailed the planning could be. But imagine the life of the project manager, the operations manager, and the person who is actually planning. So if they have to simply plan, okay, I have got these 5 resources and I am putting on workstation number one. The planning is going to be
Mhm.
slightly easier. But let's say if you have to plan, okay, now I am looking at Sam. Sam worked for 8 hours. Sam is going to do order number one, order number two, order number three. So number one problem is going to be, obviously your planning is going to be far more detailed. That means you are going to have far more work for your operations manager. That means operations managers are drawing far bigger checks. So that means your products are going to be expensive. So sometimes companies don't appreciate that. Okay, they want to reduce the amount of planning that they do. So what they are going to do is they are going to track at the pseudo resource level, as
Mhm.
opposed to getting at the actual the employee level to be able to assign. And by the way, your changes are going to be far more inconvenient as well. Because let's say if Sam does not show up today or Sneha does not show up today, then you need to make changes to where Sam or Sneha is in the system, and then take it back. Versus, let's say if you plan for 5 resources, 3 do not show up, then you are simply adjusting that number. That okay, for today the capacity is 3, or 2, you are not really marking that. Okay, Sam is not going to be available between 4 to 8.
Mhm.
So you don't really have that capacity.
Yes, no, and you do not want this to happen at a manual level. Like, you cannot manage what I just
Yeah.
said on an Excel file. You just absolutely cannot. You are increasing your overhead, and you're actually losing all that money that you were maybe going to tap into your efficiency, because now you have other people working on just planning this. So, not absolutely not saying that. And that's why you need a software or a tool that actually does all of this for you, and of course integrates with whatever 100 softwares you have, and brings that information for you. Now when you talk about the pseudo skills, you actually need to know, okay, I have like 5 of these skills available today, of which 2 did not show up, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't so somehow I need to map the 2 didn't show up for me to actually adjust my capacity and my scheduling, and then assignment of resources to these to the workstations. And that's changing, and that's actually helping you to be able to also not only improve your efficiency or meet that particular day's order, but also if you had a drop in, you know who to move around, instead of just running around and trying to scramble with all play around with all your workstations and move people around.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example in terms of the actual resource fingerprinting versus the pseudo resource, right? So in case
Mm,
of your pseudo resource, what is going to happen? Let's say if we are two welders, we are working on a station. We both have
Mm-hmm.
transferable skill that, whatever you can do, I can probably do. Okay,
Yep.
so now let's say if I am off on Monday and you are
Mm-hmm.
off on Tuesday. So what
Mm-hmm.
the system is going to do is system is going to recognize that I had 5 welders. Out of those, one of them is not going to be available on Monday. One of them is not going to be available on Tuesday. So my
Yep.
capacity is 4, as
Yep.
opposed to saying that, okay, Sneha is not going to be available on Monday, Sam is not going to be available on Tuesday, and then I am concluding that my capacity is 4.
Absolutely.
So in that, you have far more
Absolutely.
admin effort, right?
Absolutely. No, no. Absolutely, you're right. Like you are now, you are keeping a ticker of the skills that you require, but you know need to know like which workstation needs those skills, right? And
Yep,
then you
yep.
keep changing your ticker accordingly, and then assign people.
Okay, amazing. So, I want to go back to the overall the cultural piece as well, because you did mention that you
Yep.
had some people who were on the shop floor for roughly 100 years. Obviously, they are going to have a lot more clout than you are going to have if you are new to the company. Sometimes, even though if they are going to be just the operations manager or supervisor. So, tell us. I mean, see, I obviously you solved this problem from the operations perspective, but there are always also going to be issues from the culture perspective, from the change management perspective. So did you face any of those challenges as well when you were trying to do the scheduling, but then it didn't work out because of the mindset, because of the change management, because of the training of the organization?
Yeah, and Sam, you touch on a very important point, and that's very also dear to my experiences and to me specifically, individually also, is one of the pain points that I have faced. And I think in no matter which role you are, you're always dealing with change because if your company is growing, things are changing around you, and you are continuously either changing yourself, and if you have people reporting to you, you try to change something in their lives too, and that's not easy if you because people get used to doing what
Yeah.
the ways, and people want to do the same thing like repeatability is comfortable, right? And I'm just saying, not from a process standpoint, but being able to repeat the same process day in and day out is makes people comfortable, and it's hard to just move out of your comfort zone. Lots of problems that I have faced specifically in terms of managing change. So I would actually like to start with the whys. Like
Yeah.
it started with how my on-time delivery was falling, and
Yeah.
then when you keep getting into your whys, there are many reasons.
Yeah.
There are some current operations that didn't happen on time. There were some sub assemblies that didn't arrive on time. So you have some material issues right there, and then the whole piece is not everyone is talking to each other. So the planner is not talking to your operation supervisor. Your associates are not talking to your supervisor, and then you have gaps in that. But that's one piece of it. But the other problem is also adapting. So let's talk about scheduling. I gave you a new tool in your hands, and now you are trying to understand what it does. How does it empower me? There is a fear. Am I trying to be replaced because now someone you have something in your fingertips being that is smart enough to be able to do what you're doing day to day, and so that fear and being able to adapt to that change what is a struggle. And being so what is very important here is to be part of the process, run it, go to your Gemba walks, talk to people, understand what the real pain point is. Like, okay, I mean, if I didn't do my 5 whys, I wouldn't have known if scheduling was the real problem, or was it materials, or was it routings, what was it? So first find out your why, and what are you trying to solve. Once you know what you're trying to solve, you need to actually go ahead and make sure that the people who have to run this process and execute it, they know what you are solving for, why are you solving for, have ownership. And I think you have also touched upon this a lot of times, but having those change agents, what has been super successful for me is actually identifying those change agents in my team who actually believe in that idea, and they are also part of the group who are executing day in day out the processes and the products, and how they can help you manifest this change on your floor super in a very streamlined way. And also, I mean, it's not going to be super smooth, but if you can identify those, they help you propagate your vision when you are not there. When you are not there, you need someone who is also talking about your vision, who actually believes in that vision as passionately as you are. And so communication always, like over communicating can never be harmful in this case. So over communicate, create ownership, have change agents. And the last part is important, and we can debate that, but rewarding and rewards in terms of, say, if you, in this case, I'm managing my hour by hour board, I was able to improve my on time delivery by 5%. That's super nice. If I was able to successfully deliver a hot order and I won a customer or another big order because of that, that's an accomplishment, but that has to be communicated to your associates too. Reward them for it. It doesn't have to be monetary. Even a recognition in a public forum matters. So those little things and those key changes and being in touch with every layer, as I said in the beginning, also every layer of your teams is important, and making sure that you hear the pain points and adhere to it and communicate your message will be key for a successful change. It doesn't it in this example, in any other example, communication and being able to making your associates part of your process is going to be super success. It's going to make your process of managing this change super successful.
Okay, amazing. So that's it for today, Sneha. Do you have any last minute closing thoughts or remarks for our listeners?
Yes, no, absolutely. First of all, thank you. Enjoyed this conversation with you. And I definitely want to share this message, which is around change, but what I touched upon. If you have tools around you that can help you tap into your operations, into improving your goals in any way, do it. Look for it, find it, and do it. And instead of continuously going through that churn and trying to reinvent the wheel, there are people and there are tools around you. Look for it, find it, and invest in it. You will get the results.
Okay, amazing. And my personal takeaway from this conversation is going to be, when you are going to see the firefighting on your production floor, just find out the reasons. What are going to be the core reasons why the firefighting happens, why you are not able to meet the SLA, and sometimes the KPI that you might be paying attention to, they might be misleading if you don't go deeper enough and then find the solution for those problems. If you found the solution based on surface level reasons, then sometimes the solution may be misleading, and then you might not please your people as well, because the solution is not going to help. On that note, Sneha, I really want to thank you for your time. This has been a fascinating episode.
Thank you so much, Sam. Enjoyed this.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Sneha, follow her on LinkedIn and Twitter. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, you might want to check other related episodes, including the interview with Dave Westrom, who describes the importance of understanding the true internal capacity for manufacturers and how that could assist with decision making in your plans. Also, the interview with Paul Critchley from New England Lean Consulting, who discusses practical examples of how to apply the 5 S's of Lean to your organization. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.